Coming to you from the loveliest village on the plains.
Steps up, he's going to throw downfield, just a home run ball, and it is tipped up, and Lewis got it on the deflection! Lewis is going to score! Lewis is going to score!
Auburn football all season long.
Now they can play a little safer, but they're not going to. Nix is back, throws it downfield, caught, touchdown, Williams!
Hosted by Nick Higdon and Jackson Drake.
20, Peterson, a one-man to beat at the 5, he is in! Touchdown, Auburn!
The Man-to-Man AU podcast is on now.
It's game time, baby! Let's go!
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Man-to-Man AU podcast out here in the plains. I'm Nick.
And I'm Jackson.
And we are back for another off-season pod, really week 0, but we're going to talk about week 0 a little bit, but this is really a season prediction pod. We're going to predict conference champions, we're going to predict SEC standings, and we're going to go a little bit over Auburn towards the end, and then also week 0. We only highlight 2 games, but we're going to go ahead and start off with the conference SEC standings predictions, and we're going to snake it. So I'll start with 16. I have Arkansas. I think it's pretty apparent that they are the worst team in the SEC right now, or at least bottom 3 worst team in the SEC. I don't like the Silverfield hire at all. I don't even think he was that good at Memphis, comparatively to where they were with Mike Norvell before. And I think, honestly, they're just going to stay bad. I'm sorry. I think they would be in a better place if they kept Sam Pittman at this point. But I don't know. Not a big fan of that hire.
Yeah, I've got Arkansas at 16 too. A lot of the same reasons. Ryan Silverfield's probably the guy who I have the least amount of faith in, and with Taylor Green gone, I think there's not a lot of hope elsewhere. I do like KJ Jackson. I feel like he's got a lot of mobility and a little bit of that X factor, but I think their schedule is probably the worst in the SEC, and I don't think this is the type of program that you can turn around in year 1. I think, I mean, maybe long-term it could turn out well, but I think they're going to be looking for a new guy in a few years. At 15, I've got Vanderbilt. I just think, this is a big fall from grace for him, massive fall. But I think a lot of the talent has gone from that team that already played really close in the margins, and when your entire offense is Diego Pavia, going from that and to starting a true freshman in Jared Curtis, I smell disaster there, and I don't think he's going to have much help in the run game. But it's just Vanderbilt's just one of those teams where they've got to have time to rebuild, and they're not going to be a perennial team until they've got the money backing them, and they don't have that yet.
Yep. I like it. At 15, I have Kentucky. I know there's a lot of Will Stein hype, but even if that does come to fruition, it's not going to come to fruition this year. They're not going to be good this year, and I will stand on that. They might be 2 or 3 years away from being back to a decent 8-4 Kentucky team under Will Stein. And even if they do get to that, and he is a good coach, this is not a destination spot for him. So even if he has 1 9 or 3 year, he's gone. But at the end of the day, it's Kentucky. I'm sorry to say it. 14, South Carolina. This is a team that has a lot of upside. I believed in it last year. I had them top 5 in my SEC last year, but they finished 3-9, and I think it's a coaching problem. I know that might be a hot take. I think it's a Shane Beamer problem at this point. They have so much talent, especially that defense. But I have a feeling Shane Beamer is holding them back. I don't know if I like him that much as a coach. Their same issues reappear every year in, year out. Lenore Sellers was a great quarterback in year 1, declines to I would say a bad quarterback in year 2, and that's coaching. I'm losing confidence in his ability, Shane Beamer's, that is, and I just don't think that they're going to be very good. I'm not going to get cut by them again. They did bring in Kendall Briles as OC, which is really intriguing, but I just don't see it panning out for them this year. And I think Shane Beamer might be gone.
Yeah, I've got Kentucky at 14. I think, them basically just starting over. They've had a whole lot of roster turnover, and replacing Mark Stoops. yeah, the last couple of years weren't great, but I mean, he was a hedge stone in that fucking building. And I think Will Stein will be good in the future. I think they could have a similar arc to Tennessee with Heupel, how, you can find a lot of offensive talent. They can build to a year. But I don't see that happening in year one with Kenny Minchie. I think that they're going to need time to growth, and Will Stein's a very confident guy, but sometimes your confidence can be misplaced. At 13, I've got Florida, and I'm
Wow.
yeah, I'm much lower on Florida than anyone else. I really do not like the more that I've thought about it, I really don't like their O-line, and I think that O-line paired with Aaron Philo, it's just disaster waiting to happen, because you got a new starter who's trying to gain confidence, trying to find rhythm behind a bad O-line. I mean, we've seen how bad that can go. I mean, you just don't have a lot of room for development, no matter who the coach is. That being said, obviously they have a lot of talent elsewhere that could completely, transform this team and make me look stupid. But the second half of their schedule is very grueling and very difficult for a first-year head coach to handle. And without like a star player behind the center, I just don't see where a lot of the offensive impact can come from. I get it. You've got Ball, but I mean, it takes a whole lot more than a running back. Just ask us.
I agree. I'm not going to have them as low as that, but I think we have the same sentiment with Florida this year. But again, that they are very talented. That's what scares me for putting them so low. But I don't hate it. I like that prediction. I like standing 10 toes.
Yeah.
13, I got Mississippi State. I still think they're a few years away. Obviously, Jeff Levy's doing great things there. I highlighted in the last podcast, I think they might beat us this year. And obviously last year they had a couple games that they could have won against teams that were better than them. That was due to coaching, and I think I like the offensive system that they're implementing there. Kamario Taylor is going to be good, but still not going to be knock your socks off. Still going to be not that good. Still looking like a 5-7 team to me. So my 12 will be Vanderbilt. Again, I agree with everything you said. I expect a big drop off. Your whole team was pretty much Diego Pavia, and now you got true freshman, Jared Curtis at the wheel. You're going to lose some games due to that. And I think Clark Lee's a pretty good coach, but it's hard to say Vanderbilt. So that's my 12.
Yeah. At 12, I've got South Carolina. For me, this is a big question mark for me. I don't know how to interpret, almost going to the playoffs one year and then going 3-9 the next. I mean, the talent is still there. I do have faith in Shane Beamer, but I mean, last year they needed Lenoir to be Superman last year, and they paid for it because yes, he has all this talent, but without anything around him and the injuries that they had, it was marked for disaster. I think the surrounding cast did get better to help with that, but there's too many unknowns for this team. But I mean, I could see South Carolina, having a bounce back year. There's too many question marks to call it. Moving to my 11, I've got Miss State. This is another little bit of a question mark for me. I think Kamario Taylor's a big X factor in this. If he hits, they could jump several spots in this list. And I do have faith in Jeff Levy, but I mean, this is another one of those teams where there's too many unknowns to automatically put them higher, and starting Kamario Taylor could either go really well or really poorly, and it's just a wait and see kind of thing for me.
Okay. At my 11, I have Missouri. Look, I don't think they're going to be bad. I think the SEC is just deep, and I do like the addition of Austin Simmons. I think, honestly, he could be an upgrade from Bill Pribula, but, man, and I'm going to say this for a lot of teams in this, but the schedule is brutal, and I just don't think you're better than 8 teams here, and yeah, I just think the schedule is really gonna bite you there. My 10 is Florida. Again, same sentiment as you. I'm not that confident on Aaron Philo, and I have heard people inside Florida program being very confident in him. He did have a couple good games where what's his face was hurt at Georgia Tech. Haynes King was hurt, and he did ball out a little bit, but it was against an FCS team. I think he threw for like 300 yards. But still, I have heard the upsides there. I haven't seen it, and I'm going to lean towards not in an SEC environment. And I still don't know how Summerall is going to turn out. I know he's won multiple conference championships, so how could I question it? But like SEC is different, man. I mean, Billy Napier was an amazing Sun Belt coach. So I don't know how it's going to work out for them. Maybe long term, I'm wrong about Summerall, but I really don't think I'm wrong this year. So 10 is where I'm sitting for Florida.
Yeah, I've got Auburn at 10. I think this team is overall better than last year. I've talked about that in the last pod, and I am very hopeful in Golish's game planning and his offensive set with, choosing wide choice offense. But that being said, we're relying on a lot of guys to transfer their talents from G6 to Power 4, and that creates a lot of uncertainty. Like I've said before, I don't have questions about Byron Brown. I think he could be good to great, but it's everywhere else where I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant on the O-line. I'm hesitant on the wide receiver. Like, I have a lot of faith in the wide receiver room, but I could be completely wrong. The defensive line could not turn out. There's lots of question marks, and that's why I can't put them higher. I think this is a team that could go 8-4. I predicted them to go 8-4, but the floor could be very low. I mean, we'll see. It's a first-year head coach, and we've been bitten. So bitten once, twice shy, but I guess we'll just see. At the 9 spot, I've got Missouri. I think Ahmad Hardy's the best running back in the country if he's fully recovered. That being said, I don't think he's practicing right now, and that's a lot of weight to put on Austin
Yeah, he got
Simmons.
shot, didn't he?
Yeah, he got shot. I mean,
Yeah.
he's supposed to be fully healthy right now, but yet he's still not practicing. So, I mean, big question mark there. Austin Simmons is, a Lane Kiffin QB, but the worry for me is Lane Kiffin didn't even try to go after him in the transfer portal, didn't even want him. So, like, what did he see? And there's a reason he didn't. Obviously, they found a gym in Trinidad Chambliss, but there's a reason there was no question after Austin Simmons got healthy who was going to start. And so there's a little bit of question around Missouri for me, but they're also he could be a high level guy and maybe just needed the time in a system that really wanted to see him succeed, and I didn't think he had that last year.
Okay, my number 9 is Auburn. Again, I keep on saying this, but for all the same reasons you're saying. Very high ceiling, very low floor, in my opinion, and we're probably gonna go somewhere in the middle. Now, I say that, but I feel like we've hit the floor a lot recently. But
a dam's gonna break.
Yeah, that's very true. And again, I think Byron Brown's a big game changer here, bringing in his whole offensive staff. The offense should be better. The defense theoretically should be good. But then again, the schedule's really hard, like it always is for an Auburn schedule, and also it's hard to trust in a year one coach for put a lot of trust into it. I have them going 7-5, and I'm going to stand strong on that prediction. But 8-4 is not too far off, and again, we'd be happy with that. You kind of look at 9 or 10 in the SEC, and you're like, what the heck, crap? But like the SEC is so deep, and you might be sitting at 8-4 if you're 9th. Like that's how crazy it is. But
and a 9 team could be 8-4, that's how deep it is.
Exactly. So I'm excited to see what happens. I'm excited for that Baylor game. I will say, as the season gets closer, I'm getting more excited for this Auburn team. They did have a scrimmage recently, and Alex Golis wasn't too happy, just to put words lightly. So that's a little bit scary. But I also did hear that what was it? I think they said that the center was like doing a lot of high snaps, which is like, all right, calm down. We've already seen enough of that. We've already seen enough of that. I just stop. So and Alex Golis characterized them as being sloppy. So that's not a good look. But it's just hard. It's hard for us to put Auburn anywhere because every time we do this, they always end up like 8 or 9 because we don't want to be too biased, and we don't want to. We also know what they can be, but I think this year this is like a really accurate spot for them. My number 8 is going to be Ole Miss. This is controversial. I understand. But if you listen to the last podcast, I highlighted it. Of course, you bring back Trinidad Chambliss and you bring back Kewan Lacey, and you really did really good in the portal. And you have Pete Golding coming in, who's supposed to be this amazing defensive mind. But you lost Lane Kiffin, and you lost the whole offensive staff, and that was the catalyst for you. That was the catalyst for the past 5 years. Lane Kiffin turned Trinidad into what he was. I don't want to give all the credit to Lane Kiffin, but I'm going to give most of the credit to Lane Kiffin. I'm not going to lie, and I just don't think Ole Miss fans really understand that, and I don't think they're going to be able to replicate what Lane Kiffin's offense was able to do, really at all. And again, Pete Golding doesn't have any SEC head coaching. Sorry, he doesn't have any head coaching experience. Blank. Period. And I just think that they could be in for a drop-off this year. I think Auburn beats them. So now, why do I have them below Auburn? I still think they're 8-4 and Auburn's 7-5. So I think that's why Ole Miss still finishes above Auburn. But again, if you ask me, the Ole Miss and Auburn, not too far off from each other.
Yeah, I've got Tennessee at 8. I think they've got a lot of talent to finish higher. It's a QB question. I don't know how I feel about George McIntyre or Faison Brandon, whoever ends up winning the job. I think it'll be George McIntyre just because he's had a couple of years in the system. But that being said, it's also Josh Heupel. So, I mean, he can find an offense out of anything. And lately his defenses have been pretty solid. So, I mean, there could be some variance in there. I just think this team isn't as refined as, his past few teams. And I think there's a couple of gaps in development so far. And without, a star QB, where does that leave them? I think 8's a pretty good spot for them. At 7, I have Ole Miss. And this is one of those picks where, we could look so stupid at the end of the year with Trinidad and Kewan Lacey. I mean, that's the best backfield combo in the SEC, probably in the country. So their offense, I think, will still be dangerous. I don't see how you can get better after losing a Tier 1 coach and then replacing that with a coach who hasn't had a full season or had to deal with the off-field stuff and that an SEC coach has to deal with. And don't get me wrong, Pete Golding, I think he's a very talented DC. I think he could do well in that role like he has done before. But to me, he doesn't strike me as a head coach guy. He strikes me as a guy who doesn't want to have to worry about the off-field stuff or, trying to keep players. And especially he had a lot of help from the drama because the way Lane Kiffin left, it almost looked better if I'm an Ole Miss, player to stay with Ole Miss because of all the drama that happened. But you lose that effect next year. And as a head coach, you have to deal with the offense. You have to deal with staffing. And I don't know if he's the type of guy who can just do that off rip. I just don't have that feeling with him. And I think the more question marks will rise in later seasons. But right now, they're very talented running off Lane Kiffin's classes, whether they're transfer classes or recruiting. So I think he's going to live off some of that hype. And that's why he's got this 7th spot.
I agree. I think the fan base really rallied around him because of the way Lane Kiffin left. And it's blinding them, but we'll see. My number 7 is Tennessee. Again, like what you said, I still don't think they're getting as much credit as they should be this year. Obviously, they're going to have to start a freshman quarterback, Faison Brandon or McIntyre. Is his name McIntyre? I've been under the assumption that it's going to be Faison Brandon, but I don't know. I don't know much about it, but that's the name that I've heard the most. But either way, like you said, Josh Heupel can really help out a quarterback. Even if he has to make him a good system manager, he can do that. He's an offensive genius, and I expect them to be pretty good this year. I don't think they're going to be playoff good. I think they're about a year away. Like you said, I don't think they have all of the tools right now and all the fancy gadgets to be able to make a playoff run, especially with that schedule. So that's my 7. At number 6, I have Alabama. Yes, I do expect a drop off for Alabama. They were in the SEC championship last year. A big reason is quarterback. Not a lot of experience there, really known with Austin Mack or Keelan Russell. I don't know who's going to start, but my opinion doesn't change, whoever does. And you are losing a lot of your O-line, basically the whole O-line. I think you're losing 3 or 4 starters on the O-line. And that was the main reason you couldn't be a national contender last year. You couldn't run the ball. And they don't really have a lot of running backs that they brought in that really wow me. You lose Jam Miller, who was your number one guy, and you're replacing the whole line, which could be really good, but as Auburn knows, it could be really bad.
Yeah.
And if you can't run the ball, you can't win games, just flat out. You can't. And they learned that last year, and they have one of the hardest stretches in college football, in my opinion. Let me read it out to you. They got UGA, and then they go at Tennessee, Texas A&M. That's back-to-back-to-back. Bye week at LSU. You're not telling me that they're not going to lose. I don't see them winning 3 of those games. I'm sorry. They're not the Alabama of old, and they really. I mean, anybody would have a hard time winning. This is not me crapping on Alabama. I think partly I have them this low because their schedule is so dang hard, and if they can't run the ball, then there's no way they go 11-1. So I have them about 9-3. I could see them being 10-2, maybe 11-1, but I have them at 6 just for that.
Yeah, I got Texas A&M at my 6th spot. I feel like this is a fairly safe pick. I mean, Marcel Reed entering his 3rd year, it's going to be big for him, and especially if he can find some more consistency. I think they're going to be solid on both sides of the ball. I just need to see it transfer when they're playing big Tier 1 teams. I really like Mike Elko. I think that defense is going to be raw, but I've just got question marks on how does that, because I mean, we saw it fall apart last year in the last half of the season, and we saw Marcel Reed fall apart in the last half of the season. And yes, they went to the playoffs, but I mean, short run for him. So can he elevate? Yeah. If he does elevate, then they rocket up this list. I mean, this could be a playoff contender. But if it's more of the same, then I just feel like this is a good spot for him. Moving to my 5 spot, I've got Alabama. Like you said, this is an elite roster. This is another situation where I don't love starting a freshman at QB, whether he's redshirt or not. And yes, Alabama's had some success with that. But I mean, that was Nick Saban, and DeBoer's not Nick Saban. I don't love what you said how they're trying to fix their run game, which was absolutely abysmal last year. I think their O-line's going to struggle with all the replacements. But I mean, they had those similar problems last year and still made the playoffs. So it's like they can normally, like if you put all these question marks and problems on a normal team, I mean, they're going under 500. But it's Alabama. They've got the talent there. I think DeBoer's a great coach. I think he's I'm still questionable on his fit with Alabama, but I still think he can find success and win a natty there. It's just not this. He's got to figure out how to fix the O-line problems, and it doesn't come from replacing all your starters with guys who have big question marks next to him. And so I think 5's a good spot for him, but I mean, just because the talent on the team, they're going to do well.
All right, my number 5 is going to be LSU. Again, I think a lot of people have them a little bit lower than this. I think a lot of people, the consensus on LSU this year is 8-4 because it's Lane Kiffin's first year. And I don't think that's crazy off because I think they're probably a 9-3, 10-2 type team. But man, I put a lot of stock into Lane Kiffin and him bringing his offensive staff over and him winning the transfer portal, like you mentioned in the last pod. Also, like you mentioned, though, I'm not the biggest guy on Sam Leavitt, but again, it's Lane Kiffin. He can turn Sam Leavitt into a Heisman contender probably because this guy has talent. And I think with all the resources he has at LSU, he can get into national contention at year 1. I just think, again, man, the schedule's hard. And a year 1 coach just adjusting to everything, I think that's going to bite him in the end for where they're not an SEC contender, but I could see them sneaking into the playoffs. I will say right now, I have them beating Alabama at home. Number 4, I got Oklahoma, another really good team that just, I think, got better than last year. Really like what Brent Venables has been doing. John Mateer's got to be a little bit better, though. All the hype he had last year, and then it just kind of dwindled out. Now, I understand if he didn't get hurt, it might have been a different story. Shore up those injuries and really just game plan the offense around him, and don't make him be the reason you win the game is what I would say. But I think the sky's the limit for them defensively. Offensively, they can do enough to win a lot of games. I think Oklahoma is going to be a big, big factor in the SEC this year. I almost had them in my SEC championship, but I moved it off. I moved off of that. So, yeah, that's my 4.
Yeah, at my 4, I've got LSU. I think this is probably the second most talented team in the SEC if you're just looking at star factor, if you're just looking at big-time players. But it's a lot of transfer pieces that have to piece together, that have to learn a new system. And there can be some questions that arise around that. I think Lane can turn Sam Leavitt into a very solid QB. You know, like you said, we're not very high on him as a standalone quarterback. But that doesn't matter when you've got Lane Kiffin. You know, he can shine herd into a pearl. You know, and he has the ability to absolutely transform an offense. I think he's exactly what LSU needs right now. I think he fits extremely well. You know, they're a team that can handle the off-field that can bring in talent and add a guy like Lane who will continue, has that X factor with talent. He has that big name, that big face where, you know, to a room and it's like, lights are on, let's go. You're on my team right now. And I just think, you know, this is just the start. So, yeah, they've got a lot of questions around, you know, whether or not these pieces can ultimately cultivate to a tier 1 team. But I think they're there this year. I think they can, you know, compete for a playoff spot. I think they'll probably be in the playoffs. But it's all about whether or not they can transfer that success with all these different pieces. At my number 3 spot, I've got Oklahoma. It's funny how this is going because we're like all our teams are like one off except for Florida. But I've got Oklahoma at 3. It's funny. I typed in I'm probably higher on Oklahoma than others, but apparently not you. But I think this defense is going to be a top defense in the country. John Mateer is back and healthy, and I mean last year they were able to make make it to the playoffs with a terrible run game, which I think is only going to be better. I don't look at it like how I look at Alabama with them trying to fix their run game. I don't think Alabama's going to find a lot of success in the run game. I do like how Oklahoma has handled it. I think they've got some studs at running back. I think they've fixed some of the O-line issues. And if they can keep John Mateer upright and standing and able to move around, I think he can be a very solid quarterback. And I think they're a playoff team.
All right. My number 3 is going to be Georgia. If you've been listening, you're like, what the heck? That's your number 2. My 1 and 2 is kind of crazy. Anyways, Georgia, it feels illegal to put them this low because obviously they've been that dynasty in the SEC. I wouldn't even say dynasty, but they've been that premier team in the SEC. But I expect a tiny drop-off this year, mainly offensively. They lost 4 of their receiving targets. The top 4 receiving targets are gone. Including the huge loss of Zachariah Branch, who, let's be clear, won them a couple games last year. And they only have one guy in the room that has more than 10 catches last year. And just like I said, the Tennessee game was due to Gunnar Stockton, I will say, but they had a lot of help on the receiving core. Zachariah Branch, one of the big guys that really was a catalyst for that. If they find themselves in a situation like that again, I don't know if they can win that. Now, I know Kirby Smart, great coach, really put them in those situations or really got them out of those situations is what I mean to say. But that's not a sustainable practice, and you don't want to keep on putting yourself in that because you saw what happened against Ole Miss in the playoffs. They got put in that situation again, and they couldn't win because you just can't do that multiple times in a row. It's not sustainable. So, yeah, I think the receiving core takes a hit. So I think their passing game takes a hit. But they're still Georgia. They're still Kirby Smart coach team. They still have an amazing defense. They should. And Gunnar Stockton, again, I'm not amazingly high on him, but I think he's a good quarterback. And he's got another year under the system. And I think the offenses will be fine. I just think there's going to be a tiny drop-off. So I have them at number 3. I have them barely missing out on the SEC championship. I still think they might be 11-1. I think it might be a tiebreaker is the reason they're not in. And I think they have a chance to win the national championship this year. I just don't think they make it to the SEC championship. On to my number 2, and you have them at number 6 or 7, I think. Texas A&M, a team under Mike Elko that has improved every year, just going up every year. I think they were 8-4 year one, and they were really in SEC contention late in the year, and then last year it went 11-1. At some points, if you listen to the podcast last year, I thought they were the best SEC team in the country. I was standing on that until the playoffs. They looked bad against Miami, who ended up going in the championship. But still, they looked bad. Marcel Reed looked like a deer in headlights. So they really have to fix that up. But Mike Elko, a defensive mastermind, I think he's going to be able to build back that just fine, because they did lose a little bit on the defense. But I see where people are raising concern offensively. Again, with Marcel Reed, a lot of people don't trust in him. And look, that's fine. But I just think he's going to be even better this year. I'm a big Marcel Reed guy. I do know he had, if he cleans up the turnover issues, he can be a top quarterback in the SEC. And it does kind of suck. Colin Klein did leave your OC, but you hire from within. I think the quarterback's coach is now the OC, so you're going to keep the same scheme. And I just think with Mario Craver coming back and Ruben Owens, and they still have all those weapons on offense, they could be dangerous again. Man, I remember that South Carolina game. They went down 30-3 and came back and won. Now, it was against a bad South Carolina team. And look, I won't disagree, they had one of the worst schedules in the SEC last year, and when they faced a real team in Texas, they lost. And when they faced a real team in Miami, they lost. But they keep on getting better. The first year, 8-4. Last year, I thought they were one of the best teams in the country. They just keep on getting better each year, and it's only year 3. And I'm just putting a lot of stock into Mike Elko. I think he's one of the best coaches in the SEC. I'll say it. And the only reason, I'll say this right now. I'm super high on A&M. I almost have them winning the SEC. I'm going to have them losing to my number 1, obviously. But I'm just really excited to see where they're going. Really tough stretch. Really tough 5-game stretch to finish out the season. That really scares me. But I went for it. I know it's a hot take, and I could be bit by it. But
yeah.
Do I go my number 1 or?
I go.
No. Okay. Yeah.
I go my 2, 1, and you go your 1, I guess. But at 2, I've got obviously Texas. I think this is the team that is the most talented in the SEC. I think they've got the highest ceiling in the SEC. The only thing holding me back is their insane schedule that they have to face. It adds, a couple question marks. Can they stay healthy? I think this is the best wide receiver room in the SEC, and they have one of the best defensive players in the country coming back in Colin Simmons. To me, this is as close as you can get to a perfect team. And the only question is, can they still stay healthy through the stretch? Can Sark avoid, upset games where he's got to stay locked in all the time? Can he go down the stretch and come out with a consistent team and a weathered team that has the chance to, win it all? I think they can. I think, Sark's the type of guy who everyone says, oh, he can't do it because he hasn't done it. Well, if that's the logic, then no one would ever win a national championship. And, the past few national championship winners have been coaches who had never won it before, and I think just Texas is just as close as you can get to perfection right now. And the only thing that can mess it up is Sark blowing a game. And I think he's a weathered guy right now. I think he's fought through a lot of adversity, and that just adds experience, that adds, wisdom for the future. At my number 1 spot, the only team that's left is Georgia. To me, it's always Georgia. It's still Georgia. The roster is there. I think Gunner is a very underrated quarterback this year. I think he's going to take a massive step. And they've got the best coach in college football, in my opinion. The defense is going to be rock solid. I hear what you said about the wide receivers. Yes, that's a big factor. But also, Georgia is a type of team that hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiver in almost as long as Auburn, and they're still a team who has been in just about every SEC championship in the past 6 years, and so I don't, there's nothing that I can pick and fault him on because he's Kirby, and he will always be Kirby, and it's so hard to push back against that because he will bite you in the face, and I'm not going to give him any bulletin board material to put in his locker room. So I've got Georgia at 1.
That's not crazy. I will say these top 4 teams that I had, Texas, A&M, Georgia, and Oklahoma, I all had them. I was thinking about this all offseason. I all had them at one point winning the SEC. But I do have Texas winning the SEC at my number 1. This just seems like the year for them to do it. Obviously, they bring in Cam Coleman. Tears crying. Arch Manning comes back another year in the system.
Ryan
really
Wingo.
big on Sark. Ryan Wingo. Just an amazing offense, amazing receiving core. Arch Manning is set to be amazing. I think he's going to have – last year he really improved into the year, and I think he's just going to be really freaking good this year. The only thing, like you said, the schedule is a freaking gauntlet. I mean, all these teams' schedules is a gauntlet. If you go down towards the SEC, towards the bottom, it seems like the schedules are easier, which is weird. It seems like they give the good teams the hard schedules, which is not what it usually is. But
same thing the Big Ten too.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think Texas. I think it's their year to win the SEC, and I'm not going to rule out a national championship for them either. And that does mean I have Texas and Texas A&M playing back-to-back weeks, which would be insane. And I'll tell you right now, in the prediction I have right now, I have A&M beating them the first time, and then Texas winning the championship. So crazy stuff there if that happens. Maybe I'm just being kind of fun because I really wanted to do Texas, Georgia. I think that's what a lot of people are saying. But I think A&M's going to be good. So what should we roll to our just conference championship predictions?
Yeah, let's run to that.
Just to piggyback off of that, obviously SEC, I had Texas beating Texas A&M. Just talked about it. Big Ten. Wow. This was hard for me. Ultimately, I have Oregon beating Indiana in the championship. Oregon really had a really great offseason, kept a lot of impact players. You got a top 3 draft prospect and Dante Moore coming back. Amazing season. You got Evan Stewart coming back. He was hurt last year, the whole year, but I think people forgot about Evan Stewart. This guy's a beast. He's probably going to be Dante Moore's number 1 target, maybe DeCarian Moore, or however you say his name. But I expect him to just be really good this year. Obviously, there's some concern with the O-line. I think they lost 3 out of 5 starters, but I'm going to trust in Dan Lanning to rebuild that and have guys behind him that were good. And obviously, the loss of Will Stein, what is that going to do to them? I don't know. I'm going to say they're going to be fine without him. No hate to Will Stein. He's a great coach. But I just think they're uber talented, and I just think they'll be prepared. And like I said, Dan Lanning's probably a top 5-6 coach in the country. I would have him higher if he has a championship. He doesn't have one yet, but this one might be the year. I'll just say that. Indiana did a good job in the portal again, reloaded well. Josh Hoover is a good get in the portal. Before I go on, I saw a video yesterday of someone saying Josh Hoover is going to be better than Fernando Mendoza, and it made me laugh. But anyways, but obviously you bring in Nick Marsh and Chaz Preston from Michigan State and Tulane, and I think the passing attack has a chance to be really freaking good again. The defense also has a good chance to be good again. They reloaded really well on defense. They probably have the easiest schedule of the Big Ten contenders, in my opinion, besides Penn State, which I don't really see them as a contender necessarily. I think they don't sit in the tier 1. They're probably tier 2. And the tier 1 Big Ten teams, Indiana has the easiest schedule, and give Cignetti an easy schedule. He's going to kill it. Overall, I think Oregon wins this game. And I think Oregon really gets the rematch here. I think Indiana and Oregon don't play in the regular season, if I remember that right. So that would be nice. Not a huge fan of rematches in championship games, but it happens all the time now. the elephant in the room, obviously, where's Ohio State? Uh, if Ohio State's schedule is maybe the hardest in the country, in my opinion. The hardest one I've seen. That's really going to bite them in the butt. That's what I'll say. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but man, that schedule is rough. I wish I had it pulled up, but they have a really hard stretch. Another team that I was considering was USC. Lincoln Riley, another year in the system with Jordan Maeva. I never know how to say his name, but that quarterback Jordan. I think USC could be really good this year. For some reason, I just think that this is the year that maybe things come together, and I think they could be a playoff team. But again, the schedule's really hard. I mentioned Penn State. I think they're about a year away from contending again. I think I see them as an 8-4, 9-3 type team. Obviously, they brought in Matt Campbell's whole Iowa State team, but man, their schedule is really easy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made the Big Ten championship just off their schedule. But
Yeah.
for right now, I have Oregon beating Indiana in the Big Ten.
For the SEC for me, I know I have Georgia at 1, but that's just because Texas schedule is pretty rough,
Yeah.
so I think they're probably going to drop a game. But I've got Texas beating Georgia. I think a dam's going to break, and I think they check more boxes for me than Georgia does right now. And yes, there's the Kirby factor, but I mean, this is just the most complete team, and they've got experience in this spot. They face adversity in this spot, and they're hungry to get over that hump, especially after being missing out on the playoffs last year and missing out on the SEC championship. I think there's a lot of bite in that dog right now. So I've got Texas beating Georgia. Moving to my Big Ten, like you said, I was this close to putting USC in here. I was this close just because I'm a big fan of Lincoln Riley, and I think he's just now got it figured out. I think he's the type of guy, well, now that the defense has sort of got its pieces aligned, I think this offense is just going to continue to improve. But like you said, the schedule's brutal. I've got Oregon beating Ohio State. I think Oregon's probably the second or third most talented team in the country, and then Ohio State's not that far behind. But I just think that Moore this year is going to be transcendent, and I think he's probably a Heisman runner-up type of guy right now. I have zero doubts in the offense. The only sort of question marks is, the two new coordinators. What is it? Where does that leave him? But I mean, he faced some of that, last year in the playoffs. His coordinators got taken out in the middle of the playoffs. He saw what that sort of does to a team, and all of a sudden he had a whole lot more responsibility. But he sort of got a taste of that, and I think it's going to be completely different this year. So I've got Oregon beating Ohio State.
All right. My ACC championship is going to be Miami beating SMU. Miami's roster easily outclasses everyone in the ACC, in my opinion. I think Darren Mensah has a chance to be better than Carson Beck in the system. And, of course, you bring back Malachi Tony. Big get to bring him back, and I think he's going to be a huge impact player. Now, obviously, you got to replace a lot of defensive players like Ruben Bain, but they have a lot of young talent. They had a lot of young talent on the D line that are prepared to step up, and I think they will. I'm still a big Mario Cristobal guy. Now, I will admit he has some blunders in November that they have to take care of, because even though they were definitely the best team in the ACC last year, they still lost in November. They still found ways to lose in November, and they gotta clean that up. And we saw what they could live up to last year. They went to the Natty, and they were a couple of drives away from winning the Natty against a great Indiana team. But again, there's some worry for me for them to find their way to the ACC championship when they didn't even do it last year. But I think this is the year they'll do it, and I think that everything aligns. You look at their schedule. Their schedule's pretty easy, except about 2 or 3 games. They got to go to Clemson on October 3rd. Then they got to go to Notre Dame on November 7th. And a freaky one is Virginia Tech at home on November 21st. I'm going to circle those 3 games. But other than that, they should win every game. And I think they probably will beat Clemson. So I think that Notre Dame matchup is going to be a top 5 matchup, honestly. I just think this team's going to be really good. I think this is one of the teams I circle for national championship contenders. So, but I am a little bit scared just because now this might be a little crazy and just like a little like I don't know, far-sighted, I guess. Uh, Mario Cristobal scares me, and I know he went to the national championship last year, but the losses in November, the losses where they're the better team, it scares me. I have them facing SMU. I was between SMU and Louisville, and I think what it comes down to is the two spot SMU and Louisville. They play on September 19th. It comes down to that game. I think it's a clear number two. Those two are tied, clear number two for me. And at the end of the day, I'm going to trust Kevin Jennings and a Brett Lashley offense. Kevin Jennings coming back and a Brett Lashley offense. So give me Miami beating SMU in the ACC championship.
I have got Miami beating Louisville. Miami's mostly for the same reasons that you said. I think they're just, the gap between one and everyone else in the ACC is just ridiculous right now. The amount of talent they've brought in. Obviously you mentioned Darian Mensah. One guy that I'm really hyped for is Cooper Barkate. He was with Darian Mensah at Duke, and they went in and got their quarterback and top wide receiver. And, that paired with Tony, I don't know what can stop that offense. I think the O-line is probably the only question mark that I have. But also, it's Miami. I don't see how the O-line is going to be terrible. I think it's probably still going to be pretty okay. I've got them obviously beating Louisville, and I was with you on. To me, it's a toss-up between SMU and Louisville. I like Louisville's schedule a little bit more. I really like Lincoln Kienholz, Ohio State transfer. He had a lot of hype with him at Ohio State, and if Jeff Brom can do anything, it's transform a quarterback and make him excel. So I think these are going to be two very solid offenses. Nothing touches Miami, but Louisville is going to be up there, and I trust that they'll have a pretty okay defense to get through their schedule. The thing is, there's not a lot of depth in the ACC, so it doesn't take much. If you've got a really good quarterback and a solid offensive scheme, your defense could be bad, and you can still carry it far, just because there's not a lot of talent right now in the ACC. So ultimately, I've got Miami beating Louisville.
All right, in the Big 12. I have Utah beating Texas Tech. I think the trendy, obvious pick is Texas Tech winning it all. I do think they make it. Obviously, the most talented roster in the Big 12. And the offseason drama with Brendan Sorsby, we won't get into that. But I think Will Hammond will be serviceable. I still think this is going to be a really good team. They lost a lot of beasts on defense, that's for sure. They lost that $7 million D-line. But they went back again and got in the transfer portal, got the number 6 class in the country, and their schedule is really doable. They don't pull BYU, they don't pull Kansas State, and they don't pull Utah, who I think those are the next 3 best teams in the Big 12. Maybe Kansas State not, but Utah and BYU are definitely the next 2 in my opinion. And the fact that they don't pull those are really huge, and they're going to out-talent a lot of people. Utah, obviously they lost Whittingham, but they're off 11-2 season. Devin Dampier returns, and another year under his belt. They promote DC Morgan Scaley to head coach, so I think the defense will be good. I think the defense will be good as always, and I don't think they're going to lose a lot of production there. And also their schedule is really easy. Obviously they don't get Texas Tech. At the end of the day, I have them beating Texas Tech because I know it worked last year for Texas Tech, but just buying your players, at some point there's got to be a culture. There's got to be a culture loss there. And a team like Utah, who definitely has a richer culture and who has a better team, more teamly, can beat a team like that. We saw it with Oregon beating up on Texas Tech. Now, Oregon obviously has a lot of money and they buy a lot of their players, but Texas Tech is the epitome of buying your team, and at some point it's not a team, it's just people going to their job, and I think that gets them in the end, and I think Utah beats them in the Big 12 championship.
I've got Texas Tech beating BYU. Yes, BYU has, kind of defined difficult schedule whenever you're looking at all these other conferences. But relatively,
For
it's a
them.
difficult schedule. Yeah, it's relatively a difficult schedule. But I have a lot of faith in Bear Bachmeier. I think he can find a lot of success. I think it was really huge for Kalani to push back on Penn State and decide to stay and get that extension. I think, to me, they're probably the second or third most talented team in the Big 12. But I think this team has, that bite factor, where last year they got bitten twice by Texas Tech, once in the regular season and once in the conference championship. But I think that fight is going to get them there. But Texas Tech is a team where I just can't see past the talent. Yes, you have Hammond, who's this newfound starter for him after all the drama that they went through, but the pieces around him are just exponentially better than every other team. And I think if you have those pieces, I don't think he's going to drop an egg in the game. So I think that it's just going to excel him. I think he's going to get there. I think they're really going to face their struggles whenever they get to the playoffs. But right now I have them winning the Big 12.
Okay. Let's head to our week 0. We're almost there, ladies and gentlemen. As we sit here, we are about 12 days from kickoff. Well, no, that's right. It might be 11 or whatever. I'm doing mental math. But let's head into our lock of the week. Yes, the lock of the week is back. We're going to try to do better on that this year. We had bad records last year.
I did abysmal. It was like every week, no matter what I picked, it was going to go terrible.
My week 0 lock of the week is going to be TCU minus 6.5 versus North Carolina. And I'll get into that in a minute.
I didn't know that we could pick the games we were picking, but anyways.
Well, you could do either one of them. I was between that. Okay, I'll let you talk.
My lock of the week is Hawaii plus 5.5 against Stanford. I don't understand why they're predicted to lose right now. Mike Alejado is back. This is a 3,100-yard passer, 24 touchdowns. He's the Mountain West preseason offensive player of the year. On the other side, Stanford's got a first-year head coach and a QB who's coming off a major injury last year, didn't see the field. And surprisingly, this line started at -3 and has moved to -5.5 for Stanford. I'm not seeing it. Hawaii beat them last year and went on to have a pretty good year, which was dumbfounding for a lot of people, but it's because Micah Alejado. And I think that he's an extremely talented QB. I'm surprised he didn't leave, but I've got them with the upset plus 5.5.
Okay. I was considering that game too. I guess I should have. From here on out, you can do any game, but I like doing games that we didn't cover sometimes, but this one is too easy, and I'll get into it.
And week 0 is kind of hard to do it.
Yeah. North Carolina versus TCU. TCU's favored by 6.5 points. It's an 11 a.m. kickoff in Dublin. We're just so ready to watch football. But let's be honest about this game. We obviously saw the beatdown that it was last year, and it's hard not to expect the same thing once you delve into it. TCU brings in the Harvard grad transfer Jaden Craig, who threw for 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns over 2 years. Obviously, that was at Harvard, but if you're a good quarterback, you're a good quarterback. I think some of that could translate. And I think he's going to be able to make a good impact in this offense. Obviously, you got to lose Josh Hoover. I don't think he's going to be better than Josh Hoover now, but I think he could be pretty good. And I honestly, when I was going over the Big 12, I considered TCU for my, not necessarily to win it, but to be in the conversation of it. And I think they will be in the conversation deep in the season because the Big 12 is like that. Basically, anybody can get in it. It's Texas Tech and everybody else. Yeah. And obviously, I think that they'll be pretty good this year. Now, to UNC, I don't think that about them. Off the 4-8 season in Bill Belichick's first year, now they're bringing in 60 new players. 60 new players. That is insane. The one thing that is really intriguing about them is they bring in Bobby Petrino at OC, but I can't see it for them this year. Maybe they improve. Maybe they make a bowl game this year. But as far as TCU goes, and as far as it's a week 0 matchup, and it's in Dublin. That's not going to help them. I don't see them winning this game, and I don't see it being close. So I think TCU runs away with this.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this was an absolute slaughter game last year, 48-14 for TCU, where UNC got absolutely bullied on the ground, 258 yards rushing for TCU. And has UNC improved in the trenches? I don't think so. Harvard transfer Jason Craig, like you said, is taking over after Hoover. He threw for 2,800 yards, 25 TDs last year. How well does the Ivy League play transfer over to the Big 12? I think it'll transfer over well against UNC. That's for sure.
Yep.
Craig's got some help in wide receiver Jordan Dwyer. He had 136 yards in this game last year and absolutely got the better of the UNC cornerbacks. UNC's got transfer Billy Edwards Jr. at QB this year. He's a fifth-year player who's hopped around at multiple Power 4 schools, but he's coming off an injury, so there's more question marks around that. Like you said, I think the biggest pull for UNC right now is Bobby Petrino at OC. I mean, he's very talented in this role. This is the guy who 2023 Texas A&M averaged 403 yards per game. I don't think he's going to find that success at UNC, but I mean, he is still very talented, and maybe he can do something. Overall, I think TCU is going to whoop them. I don't see a lot of area where UNC can get the better of them. So I think TCU is going to win this. Jamel Johnson was an absolute stud at cornerback last year, and I think he's going to make a major impact in this game. I trust Sonny Dykes in year 5 a whole lot more than Billy in year 2, especially when the travel impact that this game carries. Who's going to travel better? I mean, it's Sonny. He's had way more experience. He's had success, and Bill is just not a college football head coach, let's be honest. So I honestly think they're probably going to be looking for a new head coach by November.
I agree. I don't know what Vegas is doing with this spread, and usually they know what they're doing. So maybe, why is it only 7? I don't understand that. But
I think it's a good lock.
Yeah, I will say, even if this game's 48-14 like last year, I'm gonna watch every second of it because it's the first game back.
I need to scratch that itch, man. I need to hit it at football.
Yeah. Let's go to our second and last game. No game of the week this week because it wouldn't matter. We got NC State at Virginia. Virginia is favored by 5.5 points. It's a 2:30 kickoff. NC State, obviously, you bring back CJ Bailey, which is huge. He can be a huge catalyst for this offense. There's some ups and there's some downs for him, but there's more ups in my opinion. And I think the only thing for NC State, not the only thing, the big issue for NC State here is the turnover on both sides of the ball. They're losing a lot of guys. I think they only have 4 returning starters on offense, if I'm right. I can't remember if that's exactly right, but it's something like that. And they only have 3 or 4 on defense. That could be a huge issue. Now, like you've highlighted before, it doesn't have to be. If you do good in the transfer portal, it's a different era of college football where you can reload and rebuild in 1 year. But I don't think that's going to be them, especially against this Virginia team, obviously off the ACC championship appearance. But they do have to replace Chandler Morris. But they do go out there and get Bo Pribula and Eli Holstein, which is a really good QB competition in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think both those guys are serviceable. I think they're going to go with Bo Pribula because he's a little bit older. But I think if Eli Holstein stays there, that he could be good. I mean, this guy was really good at Pitt, in my opinion. I'm not sure why he left. I don't know the logistics on that. But they also returned 3 of 5 starters on O-line, which is big. I think you always got to look at the O-line. When you're in week 0 and you have nothing else to focus on, you got to see the returning starters on O-line and if they were good. And they were, and they returned them. So I think this is overall a better team, and I think Virginia, who lost to NC State last year, will get revenge.
Yeah, like you said, Virginia went 13-1 last year, made it to the ACC champ, but like you also said, one of those losses was to NC State. Virginia hasn't beaten NC State since 2012. Moving to the quarterbacks, like you said, CJ Bailey, I think he's a great player. NC State guy, threw for over 3,000 yards last year, accounted for more than 30 touchdowns. I wonder how well it transfers this year without, a stud like Hollywood Smothers right beside you. Boper Beulah's throwing the rock for Virginia. I'm a big fan of him. I actually think that he's a little bit better than Austin Simmons. I think Missouri probably would do a little bit better if they kept him, but he didn't have the best performance last year, threw a lot of pick, but he's mobile, and I love a mobile QB. He's got to learn this new system, which can add some question marks, but I think he's got a top-tier O-line in front of him. This game was supposed to be played in Brazil, but now it's a home opener for UVA. I think the sane pick is Virginia, but I something's whispering in my ears that CJ,
Week 0.
CJ. So I got to go with the upset. Week 0, crazy things happen. NC State grabs the win, and the record holds.
And I will say that might be the first time in man-to-man history that we disagree in week 0.
Yeah.
Because we're usually the same because it's only like 2 games. So that's cool. That's awesome to hear. So now we're going to go over our most likely breakout versus our most likely disappointment for Auburn. Which one should we start with? Breakout?
Yeah.
Actually, let's start with disappointment.
Okay,
let's start with the bad.
Disappointment.
Let's start with the bad because
End
I
on a
don't like
high note.
negativity. Yeah. And this one's going to upset you a little bit because you're high on
Don't
this guy.
make me cry.
My most likely disappointment this year is going to be Chase Nimrod. So with all the fall camp buzz he's getting, I think there's a lot of room for disappointment there. A lot. And because from what I'm hearing too, obviously he's supposed to be wide receiver 1. He's supposed to be the best guy in the group. But if you take a step back, I don't know, maybe just from fall camp it's okay to say that, but if you look at last year, it's a little confusing because you bring in Keyshawn Singleton and you also bring in Jeremiah Coger, who were on the same team as him last year. Both had 5 more touchdowns than him, and both had 300-plus more yards than him. Keyshawn Singleton was wide receiver 1, Kroger was number 2, and Nimrod was 4. He was the 4th in receiving. So, obviously, just looking at the stats of last year, I don't know if he's the clear-cut number 1. Now, I see the upside, and I've heard everyone talk about him. He's got to be good, and I'm really not hating on him. I hope he's amazing. But just when you have Keyshawn Singleton there, who, by the way, I heard he scored 2 touchdowns in the scrimmage last week. When you have him there and you have Kroger, who, again, we're both high on both those guys, I think if your expectation is clear-cut number 1, then you could get disappointed. So that's why I have him there. But I would be happy to be wrong.
My biggest disappointment going into the season is probably going to be DeMarcus Riddick. And let me start off by saying I love this guy, okay? And I think he can find ways to make a big impact. But he's coming off a major shoulder injury. The room around him has just gotten better, and he hasn't made a jump to the starting rotation. And he's been very quiet in fall camp. I mean, you look at guys like Atkins or Melendez, and you see what the strides these guys have made, and you don't hear anything about Riddick. I think the disappointment comes from his initial recruitment. I thought this guy was an all-SEC linebacker, and now he, fast forward, and all of a sudden he's a junior fighting for a 2 spot, taking reps with the 3rd strings. And it's like, what happened? What changed? And I think that, going into the season, it's going to continue. Now, he's also the type of guy where you throw out there on a situation down, like a 3rd and short or a 3rd and long when you're trying to get a sack, and he can fly around and get it. But there's just been a whole lot of question marks and, waiting for him to make this big jump, and he has yet to do that, and I don't know if it's coming.
I like it. I kind of agree. I would say he kind of disappointed me last year because freshman year, everyone was high on his tail. He got a lot of reps freshman year, and then he really didn't get as many last year, which I think everyone was a little confused about. Let's go to my most likely breakout. And if you listen to the last podcast, you already know this. I already mentioned him in the last podcast. My impact players, I have Caleb Harris. I think if you listened, you would know how high I am on him. I think he's one of the most experienced players in Auburn secondary and already shown that he can be a productive SEC safety. He finished third in the team with 50 tackles last year. He also had a pick and a forced fumble, but he still hasn't risen above the great. Like he's just, I would say he's just been a serviceable player that the average fan probably doesn't even know his name. But I think he takes another step this year, and I think he becomes one of the leaders on the defense. With another year of experience under his belt, I wouldn't be surprised if he went from being, like I said, a serviceable starter to an elite defender. So I'm really excited to see what happens there. And really, I'm excited for the whole secondary. I was between him and Eric Winters for this pick, but I went with Caleb Harris.
Yeah, my biggest riser is going to be Jake Johnson at tight end. I was between him and Omar. I thought you were going to pick Omar, so I was like, I should probably add another one in here. You didn't, but I'm still going to go with Jake because, we've already talked a whole bunch. We've talked a whole bunch about Omar already. We know he's a guy who has excelled in fall camp and looks to be a big breakout player. So, the more hidden surprise, I guess, is going to be Jake Johnson for me because, this is a guy who's got a good amount of experience coming from Texas A&M and UNC. I think last year with Belichick diminished a lot of his hype and sort of cut down his production because it was UNC. They had terrible offense. But I love his build. He's sitting at 6'6", 245, and he's got speed. He's got hands. Goals just talked a lot about using tight ends to create more of a dynamic offense and finding more space between the hashes. And with defenses most likely keying in on Cobb and Brown and our wide receivers and trying to shut down some of that wide choice offense, having a tight end, break something in the middle is going to be great. I do it in college football 27 all the time. So I think he's the guy that can do that, especially when, tight end's been a place where we've struggled with, especially, having production and maintaining that production. And I think he's the guy to sort of remedy that.
That's a good pick. All right. Well, do you have anything to add until week 1? Because the next time we'll be on here, it's week 1.
I will say that, I heard what Golish said about the scrimmage. Honestly, that's more of what I'd rather hear than hearing everything's great because he's being honest. He's either being honest and we're finding the issues now, we're finding the problems now, and we know these guys can meld because they already meld. And so if there's areas of concern, I think it'll be more quick fixes than, big remedies that we need to make. Or he's diminishing some of, trying to lower the hype around him so we can be a surprise team because there's a lot of, years of experience on that team. I don't think this is a team that can just fall apart. And I'd rather find the issues now and then be quick fixes, with a veteran-laden team than find them out later. Or I'd rather, let's lower the hype, let's lower the expectations around, what these other teams think of us and surprise them.
Now, I will say, I don't know if you've noticed recently, but especially for me, like on social media, it seems like a lot of people are coming out of the woodworks and saying, oh, wait, Auburn could be good this year. And I'm like, shut up. Like, y'all have been saying that all offseason, and now you want to come out and say, like, someone put out an article that we're this year's Indiana, and I'm just like, dude.
Oh, my gosh, I saw that too.
Up.
And I was like, hey, I hate it when because people did that with 2019 LSU and Joe Burrow. They're like, this is this year's Joe. You're never going to have that again. And even saying that makes me lose complete respect for whatever you're writing because it's just not true.
I agree. But next time we'll see you, we will be on week 1, which is really exciting. But we'll see you then. War Eagle.
War Eagle.